Hello and welcome back to the Great Detour. Today's conversation is one that truly embodies the heart of this podcast, turning life's unexpected challenges into powerful opportunities. I'm joined by Vanessa Dias, co-founder and CEO of Elle Athletics, which is an incredible nonprofit that creates inclusive sports opportunities for children with differences and varying levels of support needs. Vanessa shares her journey as a mother and what it's like navigating the challenges of her daughter's rare genetic diagnosis and how it inspired her to build a community rooted in acceptance, education, and empowerment. We'll explore the importance of teaching inclusion, the power of community, and how Vanessa transformed her detour into a mission that's changing lives. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Great Detour podcast. I'm your host, Jess. If there's one thing I've learned about life, it's that it's full of twists and turns, and oftentimes a pretty big detour, or two. Sometimes these unexpected paths lead us to a life better than we ever imagined, and other times they give us the hardest lessons we never wanted to learn. But almost always, they leave us changed. Join me and my guests as we explore life's unplanned paths and learn from stories of growth, resilience, and transformation. I am so excited to welcome Vanessa Dias, co-founder and CEO of Elle Athletics, to the Great Detour today. Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I learned about Elle Athletics through a great friend of mine, Erica. She's a physical therapist and has been involved with Elle Athletics since its inception. And she's super passionate about it, always talking about it, and I wanted to get involved. So last spring, I signed up to volunteer at the wheelchair lacrosse launch event. And oh my gosh, it was just so incredible to be a part of. And that's the first time I saw Vanessa and I heard her story. And let me tell you, it was a soul shot. It touched my spirit and I was so incredibly inspired by it. And when I decided to start this podcast, she immediately came to mind. I knew I had to have her on the show because she would inspire others just as much as she's inspired me. So Vanessa, I am so grateful for you to be on. I would love to start off by having you tell us a little bit about Elle Athletics, what the organization's about, and just some of the amazing things that you guys are doing there.
Well, first of all, I'm so honored to hear how Elle has impacted you. It's, something that we try to do every day is to inspire other people to bring inclusion to their community. So at Elle Athletics, we provide opportunities for kids with differences to access sports that they aren't typically able to access. And while we do that, we take advantage of having the engagement of volunteers that range from high school kids to college athletes, as well as just the adults out in our community that want to share their love of their sport. We take advantage of their attention and teach them how to engage with children with differences. And so we're excited about being able to separate ourselves from the other programs that are out there right now, because we're not just trying to tell people to be inclusive, we're trying to teach people how to be inclusive.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and we're able to do that because of people like Erica, like you mentioned, who are school-based therapists, like physical therapists, occupational therapists. Allison Quincosis is Erica's counterpart in our organization, where they really curate the curriculum to make it accessible to all children of all abilities. And then at the same time, they've kind of rallied a team of other volunteer therapists to be at every session and help facilitate the engagement between the volunteers and our athletes.
I think it's so incredible. The part that really stands out to me, well, number one, you're doing something so incredible and you're giving these children with high support needs the ability to play sports that they probably weren't able to participate in at all before. So that's incredible. But on the other side of it, I think the education and the awareness part is so, so important. And you're really engaging the community and educating people and teaching people how to create a more inclusive world, which is something that I think more of us need. I know myself and others, a lot of times we want to help, but we don't really know where to start, or maybe we don't know what to do or what to say, and we're afraid we're going to offend somebody. So it's so helpful to have someone or an organization guide us and say, hey, here's the best way to support somebody who has a disability or has high support needs. And here's how you can show up for them and just be more inclusive all around. So I absolutely love that that's such a huge part of Able Athletics. I think it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So to your point of the education, when volunteers register to be a part of Able Athletics, they go through mandatory onboarding videos where we give them the language and how to talk to and about individuals with differences and kind of show them, what they could expect to see with our athletes, whether you're seeing a child wearing noise canceling headphones or using an AAC device to communicate. A lot of people like yourself, they have big hearts, they're good people, and they want to engage, and they have the time, and they're carving out, moments within their busy lives to be a part of our programming. But sometimes some of our volunteers, they get there and they're overwhelmed because they've
Mm.
never encountered a child who really won't sit still.
Mm.
And, a lot of these volunteers, they're very accomplished athletes, and it's very different for them to, engage with somebody who's not doing what the coach tells them to do.
Mm.
What our therapists do during those moments is they model for them. They don't necessarily go and tell the volunteer what to do, but they'll go and engage with the athlete and help them refocus, redirect them, help them communicate. And then from there, the volunteers are instructed to pay attention, right? See what's happening, learn from that, and use what you're learning to engage with the athlete. And usually by even within like 15, 20 minutes, you'll have a volunteer that was very nervous at the start running around with the athlete with like the ball in hand or the AAC device and or sometimes even on their back running around and just really engaging in such a beautiful, organic, supported environment.
That's incredible. How has the community received Able Athletics since its launch? Like, what's been the response by the community?
It's been overwhelmingly positive. It amazes me every time I show up on Sunday at Rippewam-Cisco, where that school in itself has been phenomenally supportive of our organization. They provide space for our program on a consistent basis at no cost, which is huge. They've allowed us to find a home, and so
Mm.
for so many of our athletes, consistency is key. And we're in Westchester, New York, and an indoor sports facility space is at a premium. You cannot find it, let alone, during the winter months, forget it. And it's usually between, 200 or upwards of hourly funding to make these programming happen. And when we have any session, we need at least about an hour and a half to 2 hour block. So as you can imagine, it gets very expensive. So
Mm.
Rippewam has been really instrumental in allowing us to make a large, consistent impact. And then the support that's come from the lacrosse community, the field hockey community, the basketball community, the football community, and the volleyball community has just really, I don't know, every time I look around each Sunday when we have our programming, it just takes my breath away. I'm in awe that so many people have really made space in their busy lives to come out and share their love of their sport with our kids.
That's incredible. So, Able Athletics, I think you didn't always grow up planning to run a growing nonprofit for kids with high support needs. I know that there's a very personal side to this organization too. So, can you tell me a little bit about the genesis of Able and how it all came to be?
I have 3 kids, and my youngest was born with a rare neurodevelopmental genetic disorder called MET13L. When she was born, it was love at first sight for all of us, for my 2 older boys and my husband and I with her. And as she grew, she struggled to meet her milestones. And her brothers, Rowan and Christian, really just didn't see it, in such a beautiful way.
Mm.
They weren't concerned that she wasn't sitting up at the right time. They weren't concerned that she wasn't walking at the right time. They just loved her, as did we. But, obviously as a parent, you worry. When she was 14 months old, we got her genetic diagnosis, and it really just rocked my husband and I, because it wasn't just she's going to catch up, it's going to be a lifetime of challenges. Obviously, when you get a diagnosis where there is a level of permanence, you kind of grieve the life that you expected for your child. And it's very normal. For the boys, like they just didn't care, and it was so inspiring for my husband and I just to see them, like, no matter what, they didn't care what was on the paper. They didn't care that, she was needing extra support to learn how to put a peg into a hole or to stand up or sit sturdy. They just loved her. It was their love for her that really Abel came out of this wanting to make sure that she participated in everything that they did. So both of them are lacrosse players, and they saw that she struggled to participate in mainstream mommy and me classes. But when they were in the yard with her, they just adapted whatever it was that they were doing with each other and saw that she was successful. And one day, in really the middle of the pandemic, they ran inside and they're like, "Hey, why don't we help Elle's friends?" And at her school, she was going to a special needs preschool at the time. And I'm like, "Well, okay, that's a phenomenal idea. Let me reach out." And I connected with some of the other parents, and I drove them around to their backyards. And it was, again, masks on and
It's a
everything in the middle
crazy
of the
time.
pandemic. They were doing that. And Erica at the time was still coming over to our house because despite the pandemic, these children who need therapies to support them to continue to develop, it just, that all continued. Life didn't stop for
Mhm.
that. And so they would talk to Erica and say, "Hey, we're going to go and, teach a kid that has this type of disability or this type of challenge, lacrosse. Like, what do you suggest we do to adapt, this drill that we want to do?" And
Mm.
Erica, she's phenomenal.
She is.
She's really like one of the most magical people that I know.
Great word to describe her. She is magical.
She is. She's magical. She's actually a superhero. If anyone ever gets a chance to meet her, you would agree. But she would come up with these like phenomenal ideas where she was just kind of making the foundational skills of the sport accessible to these kids. So one child who had severe vision impairment, and she was recommending, bright balls, like high contrast. And another child who has needed more time to process, she recommended to start working on the hand-eye coordination, where instead of practicing actually with the ball, use bubbles. Take the lacrosse stick and pop the bubbles. So there you're working on hand-eye coordination,
So
right? You're not
smart.
necessarily like playing lacrosse, but that's a foundational skill
Mhm.
for the sport and actually for many sports. And so it was really cool just learning so many different things from her that went beyond my own daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the families really enjoyed it. And like most families, we all felt isolated in the middle of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so they asked for social classes, like, can we do it with other families so we can, kind of have a built-in kind of supported play date? And me knowing my boys were not capable of supporting a group of kids with high support needs, I reached out to our local varsity head coach, James Sinowitz. He's the Scarsdale boys varsity head coach. And it turns out his daughter has needs, and he fell in love with the idea. And so what I asked him was, can you please bring a few of not necessarily your best athletes, but your athletes with the best character to come and
Mm.
support this session that Rowan and Christian are running? So he did. And then what we noticed was these great kids that came didn't know how to engage,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So
What was it
luckily,
about it? Were they nervous? Were they afraid of offending the kids or the families? How do you think they didn't know how to engage?
yeah, I think it's all of the above. And I feel like when you see it as a parent of a child with high support needs, when you see someone trying to engage with your child, you can just see there's so much going on in the person's mind of
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't want to say something that is going to, offend mom or dad,
Mhm.
or, I'm saying this and this child is actually not responding how I would expect them to respond. And so there's just so much going on there.
It's almost like paralysis.
Absolutely.
It's like I don't want to offend anyone, and then you just do nothing, which isn't the right thing at all. Yeah.
Right. And you just sit there and it's just like awkward silence for
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah. So what's your advice to somebody who's in that situation and maybe doesn't know what to do?
My advice, if you happen to be volunteering with us,
Yeah.
you'll learn from what the therapists do. And really what it is first of all, recognize that they're people too. They're
Mhm.
kids too. And my daughter, when I'm telling anyone who is going to engage with my daughter, is she loves hype. The more hyped up you are, the more hyped up she's going to be.
She
And
wants a
that's the
hype woman.
best way. She 100% wants a hyped woman.
I
She
love it.
wants, yeah, she loves, if you bring the energy, she'll respond with energy. And if
Yeah.
you're hesitant, these kids, they're so intuitive. They will recognize that, and they will,
Mm.
turn away from you and not try to engage with you. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to touch them. Obviously, ask first, ask the parent first, ask, the child first, like when you're engaging with the sport. And I say that, don't be afraid to touch, like meaning like hand over hand. Like
Mhm.
we always tell our volunteers, like, don't be afraid to correct their hand positioning on the field hockey stick, or, don't be afraid to, put your hand on their shoulders if they need kind of that physical support to guide them in the
Mhm.
right direction that you're trying to get them in, and to also recognize that they're children. Like my daughter, she's different, but she loves monster trucks just like every other, like
Love that.
7-year-old that's into cars. And it's just recognizing that they're people too.
Exactly.
And then mentioning like what you can do to kind of like speak to and about them is kind of take the cues from the parent.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different opinions about how to engage with people with differences, or how to talk about them or talk to them. And, it's very personal. For me, I feel very comfortable with the term special needs.
Mhm.
For some people, they don't. They don't want to be considered special, or, whatever their argument is. And really just talk to the person who is either their caregiver or them, the individual, if they can, verbally respond, and just let them lead you.
That's great advice. Yeah, just not being afraid to kind of just ask, like, "Hey, like, how do I like, how do I
Yeah.
approach your son or daughter? What's the best way to engage with them?" So I think that's really great advice. I'm curious, as a parent of a child with high support needs, what's it been like for you? Like, what's your journey? I imagine there must have been so much overwhelm with that diagnosis initially hit. And how did you cope with that? Because I imagine there's probably parents and others out there who are in that exact same spot and maybe in the overwhelm right now and not knowing where to do or what to do or where to turn. So I'm curious what that looked like for you and maybe kind of what resources you may have turned to during that time when you were uncertain and just figuring things out.
It took me a full year. My husband, I think, bounced back a lot faster, but it took me a full year. It was a very dark year
Mm.
for me. But really what kind of pulled me through was, well, one, Erica. Erica's, she's very much like, okay, well, this is what we got to do, and
Yep.
this is what we do. And she's just so amazing and inspiring, because I always think of, she and I actually text back and forth a lot. And one of the memes I think that often end up in our text is like that one meme where there's this little dog sitting at a breakfast table or
Mhm.
something with a coffee cup, and the entire room is ablaze. And then the wording up top says like, everything's
It's
fine.
fine.
Like
Everything's
everything,
fine.
it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. That's 100% what Erica kept telling me. She's like, it's fine. It's just gonna be fine. Like, just focus on what you need to do. And that's what I did, and I surrounded myself with people who were going to help me start laying the foundation of building I don't even know how to say it, but like a foundation of acceptance.
Mm.
She is who she is. Let's help her be her best self.
Yes.
I bought into that I had to. There's nothing else you can do. She is who she is. There's nothing I can do to
Mhm.
change her, but I can help her be her best self. And I can help her be her best self by getting her as much support as possible. And so I spent hours and hours on the phone with the insurance company, hours and hours on the phone with the doctors, and took her to every single specialist and
Mm.
found out exactly what I could do. And additionally, I joined her Rare Disease Foundation. I'm the vice chair right now of the Med13L Foundation, which we're a working board. And I am fortunate that the chair of the foundation is also a mom like myself, where it's like we're given this very complicated challenge, and we're both ones to push up our sleeves and say, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? And so the way that I've been coping is I've been doing.
Mm.
One of my biggest fears when I got my daughter's diagnosis is, how is she going to navigate the world?
Mm.
And how is the world going to accept her,
Yeah.
for who she is? And, we all grew up in a time where, and I think even now, like, it can be hard. Kids get bullied. People get bullied, just because they're different for whatever reason. to have the intellectual disability as well as vision issues, hearing issues, the low tone, everything that goes along with her syndrome. It's overwhelming. And so you carry this fear for your child, as I think actually I do for my neurotypical kids too,
Mhm.
but it's obviously very different for
Yeah.
her because she's never going to live an independent life. And so my fears are very different. But if I can just figure out what it is that she needs and just inundate her with that,
Mm.
I feel like I'm doing something. And that's what ABLE is. ABLE is really, it's making her today a better place where we're surrounding her with other athletes that are similar to her, where she feels like they're her team,
Mhm.
and she's engaging with peers within the community through the volunteers, and they're learning how to engage with her. So when we go out to the grocery store within our community, we see some of the volunteers and they run up to her and they're like, "Hey, how's it go?" And they know how to engage with her. They know she likes the hype.
She
So
likes
they
the
greet her with,
hype.
yeah, they greet her with excitement. And
Yeah.
so she's quick to engage. So she feels like she's a part of the community. So ABLE has been a coping mechanism for me because through ABLE, I feel like I'm impacting the community for not just my daughter, but for kids like her. And
Mhm.
we're teaching the community to be accepting and be friends, with these kids that have differences.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible, and I'm sure you've learned a lot from her too, I imagine. Her strength and her resilience and just watching her navigate the world with these needs that you don't have, I'm sure, like, she's taught you things too.
Yeah, I think she's definitely the most resilient person I've ever met. She has had so many surgeries,
Mm.
she's needed so much help with so many different things, and she just gets up every day and she's like the happiest person. She's always smiling. She's so funny. She's just taught me that, like, in the end, it doesn't matter. Like, today is awesome, and that's just how she operates. And it's
Wouldn't
so
life be so much better if we all had that mentality a little bit? Like, today
absolutely.
is just awesome. Yeah.
Today's awesome. Like,
Mhm.
I've got my friends, I've got my chocolate milk, I'm going to school, and I've got my favorite teacher there. And,
Yeah.
she's happy. And isn't that what's most important?
Yeah.
And she's killing it. She's great.
I
Yeah.
love this. I love this for Elle. You were talking before about acceptance and how you just came to a period where you had to accept the situation for what it was. But I feel like you did so much more than that. You really rolled up your sleeves and dove head first into it. You became a member of the foundation that you just mentioned. You created Able Athletics. You just did so much with such a challenging situation. So I just want to commend you for that. I think it's just so incredibly inspiring in so many different ways.
Thank you. It's not easy.
Mm.
It's definitely, there's been many, many times where I realize why not everybody does it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
It's
a
a
lot.
lot of work. It's been hard. It's been an uphill battle. I've been on the phone with the IRS when we're trying to apply for the 501(c)(3)
Mm.
and talking to them and talking to the insurance companies, talking to, our pro bono attorneys, where it's like, why does it have to be so hard to do something so good? And it is what it is. It's because there's so many people that are, I guess, I mean, there's processes in place, right, to just make sure that the right people are doing the
Mhm.
right things, and the people that are trying to not do the right things
Yeah.
aren't successful. And so it's been a challenge, but we've done some incredible things. We have a beautiful relationship with USA Lacrosse, with USA Field
You
Hockey.
just went to something in Indiana, right? For
Yes,
USA
yeah.
how was that for USA Lacrosse, correct?
It was really, really cool. We were invited to co-host USA Lacrosse's first ever adaptive clinic and be a part of their first adaptive tournament. So we had some lacrosse Hall of Famers, the USA national team, the Puerto Rican national team, some players from the UK volunteer and
Wow.
engage with our kids during the first clinic. And it was incredible. We're taking this mission to educate inclusion and to make opportunities available to the national stage. And we've done the same thing with USA Field Hockey, where we haven't hosted a clinic with them yet. That is, in the talks, but we are at the forefront with them, where we have been a part of their first, and we're actually going back again for the third year in a row to be a part of their adaptive national indoor tournament. But they have a all-star division where they're really trying to grow the game responsibly and
Mhm.
inclusively. And really, USA field hockey just got into the Olympics, and same with lacrosse. And, both of those governing bodies are really trying to kind of create a pipeline for athletes and athlete development to hopefully get into the Special Olympics and Paralympics. And
Wow.
we're doing kind of the same thing. When we went to Indy, we got on a plane with a bunch of sport wheelchairs that we got from.
Oh, that was at the event that I was at, right?
Yeah.
That was so incredible to watch, by the way. People playing in wheelchairs it was just so cool to see it happen. And it requires a lot of coordination too. I don't think I could do it.
So we had these very accomplished world-class lacrosse players
Mhm.
get into the chairs and try to play this sport that comes at this point so naturally to them. And they were
It's
struggling. And
humbling. Yeah.
that's a part of what we're trying to do, is to teach the challenge, so people understand, like, it's difficult to do what these athletes are doing.
Mhm.
And then you create like a deeper level of understanding and empathy. And it was really cool. Yeah. So we do have a wheelchair lacrosse division. We received a very generous grant from the Hartford Insurance Company that allowed us to purchase 12 sport wheelchairs. Then we fundraised from the community, and we were able to purchase 3 more wheelchairs. So this coming spring, we're offering our first ever unified adaptive wheelchair lacrosse program. So we're going to
Wow.
have chair users as well as non-chair users get in the chair to provide a truly competitive wheelchair lacrosse opportunity this spring alongside our inclusive lacrosse programming.
That's fantastic. It sounds like lots of exciting things to come. Anything else we have to look forward to, or anything else on your list of goals for Able in the future?
We're really trying to develop out a template where we can really plug and play and really take what we're doing with education and opportunities out to other communities beyond our own.
Mhm.
The mission is too great to stay in Westchester.
Yeah.
It is obviously a long process, but we're doing some great things. We, as I mentioned, we have a really good relationship with USA Field Hockey, and they're really supportive of that too.
Mhm.
We're going to hopefully be helping another program out in Michigan develop, growing the game, and growing the adaptive community is definitely at the forefront of our hearts.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, Able Athletics filled a gap in the inclusion story for a lot of children. Do you think there are any other major gaps that you see as a mother of a child with high support needs? And, what would you do differently, or what do you wish was different?
Oh, there's so many
So
things.
many, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons actually why Able became Able was because there's not enough programming, social programming
Mm.
available for kids with high support needs that are young, from birth to about 8. Most programming for kids with needs starts around 8. There is a severe lack of programming. And what's unfortunate is during that time period, that's when kids need to be inundated with opportunities, not just their physical opportunities, but social opportunities. And then on top of that, everything is so expensive.
Oh, yeah.
For
Imagine.
example, my daughter does hippotherapy. And so she goes horseback riding with the
I've
therapist.
never heard of that before. That's so unique.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, she rides at Endeavor. She has graduated now, so she's not doing it with an occupational therapist,
Mm.
but she's now just learning to ride. But it's a supported riding environment, and there are other stables around that do it. We
Mm.
just happen to go to Endeavor. It's very expensive. Very
Mm.
expensive. And there's a massive wait list because there's not enough programs like this available for the amount of
Mm.
people there are with disabilities.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, there would be more programs available, and they would be much more affordable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I imagine when Elle was first diagnosed, it must have been like a very isolating feeling. You probably looked around and thought, oh my gosh, nobody else is going through this. Like, I'm so alone. But as you did outreach, as you started Able, you probably found there's a big community of families and people who have children with high support needs and disabilities. And what's that been like for you?
It's been comforting. For
Comforting.
sure. It's been
Yeah.
comforting. I think one of the most natural things that happen to many of us when we get any sort of diagnosis,
Mm.
right? Whether it's related to your child or not, is you're like, why me?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's only happening to me, but it's really not. Luckily, there's so many good things and bad things about the internet nowadays. But like one of the good things that do come out of it is realizing that you're actually not alone and you're not the only person. Even with my daughter with her rare genetic disorder, there's other people out there with the same
Yeah.
genetic disorder. What's interesting is that my husband and I are not carriers. It's called a de novo mutation where it just spontaneously happened. And so we felt so alone because it was really just by chance
Yeah.
that this happened to her. And once I joined the foundation, once we started Able, it's really we've found our family. We've truly found people that are experiencing such similar things as we are, whether it's, struggling to find a sitter that knows how to manage your child's behaviors and that you can trust. And whether it's, finding a feeding specialist to help your child learn how to swallow properly or get over the sensory issues that they have, or even within food. Everyone's going through so much, or how to navigate an IEP meeting with your school district. It's so important for the community aspect in your healing and in your coping. As I mentioned before, for me, it was a full year. And listen, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not every day that it's like sunshine and like, let's do
Of
this.
course.
There's definitely still a lot of moments of just like breaking down and crying and like, this sucks.
Yeah. It's the human experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You can,
It's rough sometimes. It really is. But I love what
yeah.
you were just saying about community. That is a theme that has come out in almost every one of my episodes so far. No matter what detour you're going through in life, community is such a critical part of the healing journey, and just plugging into whatever community that might be and just finding your people and not being afraid to lean on others when you're going through something and you're navigating a detour. It's so, so healing, I think.
Yeah, it's hard, especially with something like a learning difference
Mhm.
or, especially with like the invisible differences, right? That some of these kids have. There's a lot of families that they don't want to talk about it or they don't want to acknowledge.
Mm.
And I was like that. I was never on social media before. I was never on Facebook before. I joined and I still don't even have like my actual picture up there or my even like full name as like my profile. I'm a private person,
Mm.
naturally. And so it's been really hard for me to kind of get through this point of where I'm on a podcast talking about my
Yeah.
daughter and her genetic diagnosis. But for me, it's finding the community and realizing that you're not alone, and then finding the power
Mm.
in that, finding the power in acceptance, and then feeling like you can do something about it. Like, am I going to change my daughter's genetic diagnosis? No, but I'm going to change her day to day. She now has a phenomenal team, a phenomenal network of friends and community that should she ever feel like she wants to go have a party, like she's going to have her whole Able community to probably show up, and they're going to celebrate her and despite her differences. And so the community is so key. And I do feel that it starts with a level of acceptance.
Mm. Yeah. But it sounds like you're working and continue to build a beautiful life for your daughter and for others as well. You've really taken a challenging situation and created such purpose and impact from it, not just for yourself and for Elle, but for the broader community. And isn't that a way to handle a detour? I am so, so inspired by you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think what really has been so phenomenal that has come out of this is I've found as well my friends,
Mm.
not just Elle finding her friends in her community, is I found my friends in my community, for people that understand like there are rough days, there
Mhm.
are hard days, but there's also beauty in what we're doing and what we're seeing. And there's a lot of healing, that comes out of connecting with people in the same space.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think community is so important. And what you just said about like finding beauty. I think finding beauty in the darkness and finding joy in the hard times is critical in getting you through those moments. I've certainly had to do that on the many detours I've been on. And it sounds counterintuitive, like when you're going through a tough time or you're in a transition or uncertain to find any light. But I think it's that light that really sustains you and just gives you that hope and kind of keeps you going. And then, not that things necessarily get better over time, but it becomes more manageable. And then light, it just feels like it expands a bit and it just gets bigger and bigger over time. So I wanted to close with one last question for anybody listening who is a parent or just close to somebody who maybe got an unexpected diagnosis and is just in a period of uncertainty and they're in the overwhelm. Would you like to leave them with any type of advice or thoughts?
You're not alone.
Mm.
For some reason, everyone's on Facebook. So find your Facebook community. It's really, I think, finding your people in whatever way, whether it's through your community outside of your door or, through some Facebook group. I'm not sure, but there are other people out there going through the exact same thing. Whether you think it or not, they really are. Connecting with those people and learning from them. And don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to share your story. And because I really think there's so much healing that comes out of talking about it, talking to people. And I think that the more you share your story, the more you're going to learn that other people are dealing with their own challenges. And I think that we all kind of navigate through life where it's like, oh, it's just happening to me, or, oh, I'm the only one that has this challenge, or I'm the only one that struggles with this. But, the more you kind of just like say, this is who I am, this is what's happening, you'll realize other people are like, well, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it kind of just feels like, okay, well then, maybe this is just life.
Mhm.
It's not meant to be roses and fireworks at all times. Like this is just life. And, whether we're trying to learn something or just make it through the day, I don't know, but this is it. And, you got one moment in this space that they'll never get back. And you're like, what are you going to do with it? Allow yourself to grieve. There will be that time. Allow that. Give yourself that. Everybody needs that. Find whatever it is that makes you happy, whether it's talking to a friend, talking to a therapist, going out and screaming, or going and running, playing sports or drawing or playing music, whatever it is. Find your outlet, but most importantly, find your people.
I love it. Such great advice, Vanessa. Thank you so much. So for anybody who is interested in learning more about Able Athletics, whether they have a child who wants to participate or they want to volunteer themselves, where can they find out more information?
Visit us on our website at ableathletics.org and follow us on our social media at ableathletics.org. We're on Instagram. And then anyone who is interested in just sending an email, you can email info@ableathletics.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Again, thank you so much for your vulnerability, your bravery, and sharing your story. I know that it's going to help so many people. So I'm so grateful for you.
Thanks. And I'm really glad I didn't cry.
I'm proud of you. I thought you were concerned about that.
I was really worried. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Great Detour. If you like what you're hearing, I'd love if you could leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a detour story of your own, you can send it to mystory@thegreatdetour.com or shoot me a message at The Great Detour on Instagram. Thanks for taking this journey with me.